Just wait for 10 seconds, 10-15 seconds, and then start. I guess I can start now. Um, Anybody who wants to join, they can join and catch up from there. So I was just summarize and just for 10 seconds that we saw in the first part of the session that menstruation, the Vedics, the Yajurveda Taitira Samhita story of Indra, and how it lays a foundation to a multidimensional understanding of menstruation in Hindu Dharma. And among this, I spoke about the element of ashaucha, which is ritual impurity, which has no moral connotation, which simply means that due to the heightened condition of rajasic energy, rajoguna, and the blood, the flow of blood in the during periods, they are ineligible to perform certain ritual activities. And it is also because these activities will have serious effect on their health. These activities are said to not to be practiced. And apart from that, I also noted that Hindu Shastra does not end here. They add that not only it is ashaucha, but by entering this temporary period of ashaucha, women become women are always pure. They are ever pure. That is the term the Dharma Shastras use, and this is kind of a purity to which women obtain naturally by their very biological process, by the very process how their body is there through this process of menstruation. This is but men do not have this facility. Men have to put in effort through various sandhya vandana and various puja and other kinds of activity, wherein through which men have to attain this condition of shaucha. I also noted how that though women are asked not to go to temple, not to do this religious activities during menstruation, the menstruation itself, the lifestyle suggested for menstruation, the process itself is a kind of a tapasya, and it gives them all the spiritual benefits to them if they just observe it. And of course, the notion of rest, I also dealt with that. Now I want to take up this aspect of sacred celebration. This is a very important aspect, and in the beginning I noted that the story of the Indra, it connects it locates the menstruation process in the larger what shall I say uh, yeah, in the larger process of the larger biological process, larger process, how women go through different stages in their biology, from menstruation to motherhood and the whole thing, right? So by connecting it to motherhood, it connects menstruation to Stri Dharma. Stri Dharma is considered in the Shastric perspective as one of the most direct means or easiest means for women to attain Abhyudaya and Nishrayasa, material and spiritual goal. We have all this, the text again and again glorify women like Anasuya, women like Sita, and all of them as Pativrata, Nari, or Sati, and all those things. Because of this reason, because it is said that women, by respecting their biology and by dedicating themselves to their family, they attain the same spiritual benefits same punyam that men attain through various methods like doing intense sadhana, doing intense kind of yajna, homa, and all those things. This is kind of a karma yoga path for is the part karma yoga, part bhakti yoga. All the notions like pati parmeshwar hai, sometimes it looks funny, and it should not be taken out of its context, but it comes from this aspect of Stri Dharma, wherein through Shushrusha, or the looking after the household, the looking after oneself through this, respecting one's biology, it may be Rajaswala, it may be the pregnancy, all those things, women attain spiritual and benefits as a punyam and all kinds of dharmic benefits. It's not that women cannot do anything else. It's just that this is portrayed in the Shastra as the easiest path. So connected to this is that the giving birth itself is considered as a very punya act, and as such menstruation which facilitates this. Because why does it facilitate? Basically, what is this whole process, the whole 1 month cycle is basically it prepares the woman to become mothers. And therefore the Rajaswala dharma, the do's and don'ts that exist during the 3 days periods, it one of its aim is also to ensure that health of the woman is maintained, there is no imbalance in her body, and it does not hamper her ability to conceive. So motherhood is deeply connected to that, and for this reason also menstruation is celebrated. There are different kinds of celebrations, in fact, that is taken. One and most prominent one, or most visible one, is of course that when the girl has her first periods, when menarche happens, there is a huge celebration. I have mentioned in my book how this is called as Ritukala Samskara. It is also a kind of a samskara, and how this Ritukala Samskara was prevalent across India at one point of time, say even 150 years back. It was present throughout India among all the communities, across the castes, across the divisions of community, among the tribal communities, among the non-tribal communities, in the cities, in the villages, everywhere it was present. However, in the last 150 years, due to colonial education and our adopting of modern values, we have, at least in the urban conditions, people have largely, abandoned it. Especially large portions of North India, this practice no longer exists. But even today, it is there in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, in some states in Northeast, in Andhra, and all. To some extent, I have seen my own elder sisters having a small kind of event when my elder sister had her first periods. I will not go into the exact practices of this Ritukala Samskara because it differs from community to community. But basically, uh, uh, it involves what it involves. It basically involves two things. One, it places the young girl, at the center of attention, and gives she is treated as a manifestation of Shakti itself, and the arti is done to her, and people give her gifts, and so the whole thing gives a very positive perspective to her. It's a psychologically she feels good about this menstruation. She feels good that, and this is also puberty ritual. She transits from being a child to being a young woman, right? So the basic purpose, there are twofold purpose of this this Ritukala Samskara is that it it imparts to her that a notion that menstruation is a sacred process, it is a special process, it is a positive process, it is something which is very core to her femininity. Contrary to modern narrative, which associates menstruation with kind of shame, the all these ads, just take up the names of ads, the sanitary products like Whisper and Stay Free. Whisper means whispering, keeping something secret, talking about it in a hush hush voice. But here we have a festival which is openly done in a community, kind of announcing to the community, look, my girl has grown up. She is now menstruating. She is now a grown woman. She has entered a she has become a manifestation of Shakti. And on the other, similarly, stay free. The name itself kind of conveys. I have a whole chapter on this in my book. How this the stay free and other products conveys that some of women have to get rid of menstruation. The notion is that in the name of equality for women, the notion that is being promoted is masculinization of women. Look, if you have to compete with your men folk, you have to become male like. You have to overcome your femininity, and the most visible aspect of femininity is menstruation, because that is very obvious that it keeps women distinct from men. So they have to wipe this distinction through pills, through tampons, through all these products. So this is the notion. This is not just my observation. I have quoted in my book international scholars who have made similar observations, have studied or done a comparative study of Hindu notions of menstruation with Western modern notions of menstruation. But our Ritukala Samskara, it gives a very positive notion to young women about her own womanhood. Secondly, it serves the purpose of imparting to them the knowledge about the do's and don'ts during the 3 days period. So she is told that, look, when you are in periods, you have to stay separate from the family. You have to eat a particular kind of food. See, this particular kind of food which is given to her during the Menarche festival, as well as subsequently during her periods, it is completely rooted in Ayurveda. Ayurveda says that women during their menses, they are in their digestive capacity, they are in a condition called as Agni Mandya. That is, the digestive fire is in a very weak condition. So it says that it gives certain food prescriptions that about kind of food they should eat. It should be light food. It should be not be heavy food like meat, etc. It should be light food, and they should take that food in a little amount. So, and these prescriptions and kind of food they have to give. These are all in Ayurvedic texts. It is meant to ensure that there is a balance in the tridoshas are not disturbed in the woman's body. This is the part of the celebration. The Ritusakala Samskara helps them to celebrate menstruation. But this is not just that. We have other kinds of celebration as well. For example, we have temples wherein our deities, the the Devis, are perceived as undergoing yearly menstruation. The most famous is Kamakhya temple, wherein we have a yearly festival of Ambubachi festival, wherein the mother is said to undergo menstruation, and for 3 days, 3 or 4 days, the temple is shut down for outsiders. Mother is given rest, just like a woman takes rest during 3 days. The mother is given rest and she is secluded. Nobody is allowed to enter the temple. And on the fourth day, the prasadam is that there is a springs, there is hot springs which comes from, there is a yoni pitha, and that spring has a red color. The prasadam is that this tirtham is given as prasad. And and this is not just a isolated incident. In Odisha, they have something called as Raja Parba, the festival of Raja. Raja in Odia, as in Sanskrit, means blood. It means menstruation. And they celebrate it wherein they worship Harachari Devi. And the villagers do not do any kind of agricultural activities during that time. They also believe that Bhumi Devi undergoes menstruation during that time. The Bhumi has to be given rest. Similarly, in Karnataka, we have, among the Tulu community, we have Keddasa festival, wherein the Bhumi is understood as going yearly menstruation once in a year, and then the agricultural activities are not done. And we have temple in Kerala, Chennagur Mahadevi temple, the Parvati temple, wherein every few months you can see a blood-like spot on the in the sari of that the mother wears, and when this is examined and when such spots appear, that for 3 days the mother is considered as in a state of menstruation, and she's shifted to a separate place within the temple, and on the fourth day she is taken to the nearby the river, and she's bathed, and she's brought back to the temple in a great utsava, and all the thousands of devotees from surrounding villages come and attend this utsava. So menstruation is a great celebration for us. And what is more, in some of the tantric texts, see, we saw about this Ashaucha and all, which are basically from Vaidika Parampara, but we have Tantrika Parampara, which says, in some sampradayas of Tantrika Parampara, some sects of like Bauls and other who perform this Vama Margas, they believe that menstruation is an ideal time to perform certain ritual activity. They consider the 3 days of menstruation as a Maha Yoga, and the Bauls, they can call it Maha Yoga, and they do a kind of a sexual sadhana during this 3 days period. But we need to note that this is not contradictory to the Vaidika assertion that there should not be a sexual intercourse during the 3 day period, the 3 day menstrual period, because the Vaidika instruction is for the grihastha, is for the householders, is for normal people like you and me. But this particular sadhana is for a particular kind of people who are initiates into that tradition. And we have certain Buddhist tantric texts which speak about how Shakti is pure, and everything that comes, the women are representation of Shakti, and everything that comes out of Shakti, including menstrual blood, is pure. So Hinduism has a very vast variety of understanding and approaches to menstruation, which are applicable in different contexts. Regarding this celebration aspect, again, this is a very important aspect. And we just had Navaratri, and I realized when I was studying on this menstruation that the first five deities in the Navadurgas, Navadurga is usually worshipped during Navaratri. The Durga Stotam which says that Pratamam Shailaputri cha Dvitiyam Brahmacharini. So Shailaputri, Brahmacharini, and then we have Chandraghanta, and then Kushmand and Skandamata. These are the first five mothers. They actually represent mother in 5 stages of her life. They represent the form of the Devi which presides over the 5 stages of women's biological life. Shailaputri, the daughter, very young age, the child, when the girl is in a childhood stage. Brahmacharini represents women who have had menarche, it is menstruating Kanya before her marriage. And then Chandraghanta represents the state of marriage. The Chandraghanta represents Uma marrying Shiva. And then we have Kushmanda, which is associated, which can be associated with the state of pregnancy. And then Skandamata is state of motherhood. So this is such a fascinating thing. And in Dharma Shastras, Gauri, certain forms of Gauri is associated with menstruation. So we have many deities associated with menstruation in Hindu Dharma. So considering all this into account, as well as the Ayurvedic aspect, see, I said that Ayurveda gives certain do's and don'ts, and even Dharma Shastra gives and do's and don'ts. And this Ayurvedic prescription include regarding food, regarding not taking bath, not doing makeup, not having oil bath, and not cutting your nails, not cutting your hairs, and not sleeping during the daytime, and preferably sleeping on a mat or mat made of kusha grass in the night time. See, all these, and not having sexual intercourse, all these are done. The Ayurveda which says it is because it says from a health point of view that all these activities, if done, it leads to imbalance, it leads to serious disturbance of the biological process, menstruation process of the woman, and this disturbance could affect, among other things, the ability to woman to conceive, and as well as the health of the child conceived such. The other aspect, of course, I explained throughout the presentation, the Dharma Shastra aspect, that it is connected to tapasya. Some of the aspects are connected to tapasya, some aspects are connected to ashaucha, some aspect connected to purification process, some aspect connected to rest. So this is a overall macro perspective. Ayurveda, in fact, the interesting thing here is, today most women believe having pain during periods is a natural thing, is a normal thing. A lot of women have the pain and other things during women, menstruation, but Ayurveda defines normal arthavam. Arthavam is another name for menstruation. The normal menstruation is one which is without pain. This is the definition. And how do you go from pain to a condition without pain? It is to practicing these do's and don'ts, which the Ayurvedic text called as Rajasvala Paricharya. Paricharya means lifestyle practices. The Dharma Shastra call it Rajo Dharma. The Dharma, Paricharya, whatever name you use, the basic is these do's and don'ts have to be practiced. And because today some people always, whenever I speak about Hinduism, Hindu Dharma and Hindu Shastra, they ask me, what is the scientific basis? See, this is a very problematic question. So we do not need to have a scientific explanation for a Shastric issue. What Dharma Shastra says, what the Veda says, they are pramana on its own. This is called as Shastra Pramana. In Hindu Dharma, we accept 6 pramanas, the direct perception, logic or inference, and etc. Among one of which is Shastra, Shabda Pramana, that is Veda. And we do not need any other kind of scientific, reinforcement or for that. But nevertheless, because people are today trained to think in a certain way, in my book I have included one scientific study that was conducted by a group of researchers, wherein some I think 25 to 30 girls were from 25 to 30 years of age. All the details are in the book, you can check it out. The title of the book is Menstruation Across Cultures, the Shabarimala Confusion, Menstruation Across Cultures, a Historical Perspective. So in this study, they found a group of women who had different kinds of issues that women normally face during menstruation. Excess bleeding, less bleeding, the pain, and pimples, and many kinds of these issues. And they were asked to practice this Rajasvala Paricharya for 6 months, just 6 months, and they were monitored. By the end of the 6 months, 99% of the issues that women faced, by all women, not just one or two, all the women, all the issues, most of the issues that these women faced were resolved on its own. And I can tell in a science kind of personal experience, not in a personal in the sense of personal experience, but I have seen my wife who had the periods were kind of irregular. By practicing this Rajasvala Paricharya for a few months, it became regular. So the Rajasvala Paricharya is nowadays the allopathy only prescribes some kind of medicines, chemicals and tablets and all, but this practicing Rajasvala Paricharya is a more effective way, because you are not pumping chemicals into your body. It's a natural way. You are just monitoring and ordering your lifestyle, and most important of them is the food aspect, and that is something which everybody can do. And just I want to, before concluding, I want to just summarize, because Sheshadriji wanted me to stress on this aspect, that the practical aspect, what are the do's and don'ts. I just have summarized from my book what are the things that women can do today, and that the texts also speak about. In fact, I have in my book, towards the end of the book, I have a small section called recommendations, which is some of the practices I have listed as that modern women can do. Because see, modern life is completely different from the kind of life we used to live in 100 years back. Now we have women have to go to office, they have to work, so some of the things cannot be avoided. So but there are at least some of the things that women can do. And anyways, not all women are working women, and not all women work by going outside. Some of them work from home as well. So just to summarize, some of the do's and don'ts are regarding food. You know, one is the eating light meals, like ghee, rice, milk, and meal made of barley. These are, and avoiding non-vegetarian food, avoiding junk food, outside food, eating home cooked food, and eating using your fingers instead of metal spoons and forks, or metal utensils, using plates made out of leaves, avoiding metal objects during periods, and consuming less amount of food. These are something that anybody can do, even working women can do easily. You know, and second is, of course, regarding sexual intimacy aspect. Observing celibacy during the 3 days period is very important, because sexual intercourse basically can have serious impact, can seriously disturb the biological process, that seriously disturb the vata pitta kapha doshas, as that is why it is suggested. And then sleep, even though even normally it is suggested that people should not sleep during the daytime, but especially during menstruation, sleeping during daytime should be avoided. And if possible, women can sleep separately, and in a on a mat or a charpoy rather than on the normal bed. That should be would be helpful, and it is also kind of tapasya. And then self adorning, avoiding, brushing teeth, makeup and anointment, use of colorium, body massage, hair combing, nail paring, taking bath. I know all this may not be possible for everyone, but some of them, at least for example, not cutting the nails, not cutting the hairs, not taking body massage, not taking hair, some of this can be at least avoided. And then of course, the physical work, and this is very important. I want to stress this upon the viewers. Despite, contrary to the modern narrative that is being done, that anything is okay during menstruation, any kind of sports, any kind of activity, physically exertive activity is good. It is not so. Physical exertion has serious consequences on the health of the women. It should be avoided, including cooking food. It should be avoided as much as possible. And finally, of course, mental stress, as much as possible. Women should be happy during that period. They should not be stressful about anything. They should keep a calm and happy mind. They should involve themselves in something, like read a novel, read a book, something, do some embroidery or something that makes you happy. And of course, religious activity is there. Avoid going temples, avoid attending any kind of puja, homa, and all those things during this period. And so these are the basic do's and don'ts, that is very generic in nature, that anybody, most of the women, can practice to some extent. And I want to end with, as Bhagavad Gita says, that Swadharmo Nidhanam Shreya. But it also in another place says that even if you do dharma even a little, and even little bit of dharma frees you from fear, that it is very beneficial to you. So it may not be possible for everyone to practice everything, but it is definitely possible that you can practice some of it some of the times. So this is the prescription of the Ayurveda, this is the prescription of the Dharma Shastras, that women have to should practice some of these lifestyle practices. It will be beneficial for them from a spiritual point of view, from a health point of view as well. So I think with this I want to conclude my session. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I have switched on my comments, and if you have any questions, I think I may have one or two questions. I would like to take it up, and I have some 10 or 15 minutes more, and I can definitely quickly take up some of the questions. Even if you don't have the questions anymore now, and you get a question later or anything, you can refer my book. The book is available on Amazon, available on Flipkart, and it's titled Menstruation Across Cultures, A Historical Perspective, by Nitin Sridhar. And you can contact me on Twitter, on Facebook. Just type out my name, Nitin Sridhar. You will get my profile, and you can contact me. And now, if you have any questions, please do ask. I will just wait for a few minutes and see if there are any questions. that I can take. And as I wait for some of the questions, I just want to stress that this we have to approach our shastras from with a shraddha perspective, and that is the most important thing, because the Shastras reveal them. The Shastras are guru on their own. We approach skeptically. Skepticism is okay to some extent, but skepticism should be accompanied by open-mindedness. But if you are approaching Shastra with a hostility, something in the academic circle, this is called as what is it? It is called as hermeneutics of I forgot the name. There are two things: hermeneutics of respect and hermeneutics of suspicion. I think I got it right now. So, if you approach the Shastra with suspicion, then you will not be able to learn anything. The only reason, see, what I am saying today is not something I have made it out. I have made up. This is not something I have created. This is something that I discovered in my engagement with the Shastras, engagement with lot of works, 3 years of study on Ayurveda, on Dharma Shastra, on Veda, on Puranas and Smritis, and yoga texts, so many texts, and the Tantra traditions. I was able to do it because I approached these traditions with Shraddha, with an open mindedness, with the inquisitiveness of a child, and not with the suspicion. And so I want to just conclude with that comment. I don't do I have a question? I'm not sure. Can you tell us a bit? One question is, can you tell a bit about your book that you have written on this? Yes, the book, as I said, that it is titled "Menstruation Across Cultures: A Historical Perspective." The superscript is Shabrimala Confusion. It's published by Vitasta Publication. It came out in December 2018. The book actually came about. I started working on it when the Shabrimala issue happened back in 2015, and there was a narrative. That one narrative was about the temple practice itself, and I have spoken and written about it. I will not take up here, but the underlying narrative, which nobody was actually countering, or the media narrative, was that Hinduism degrades women, looks down upon women because it considers menstruation as impure. Because they made out that the whole temple entry issue was because of menstruation, and Hinduism treats menstruating women as degrading. So I wanted to examine, this is how I came into this topic. I wanted to examine, is it true? Is it false? This was a simple question that I had. What is the Hindu view of menstruation? What does the Hindu Shastras, the Hindu tradition, the Hindu history speaks about menstruation? And this resulted in a series of articles called Hindu Views of Menstruation, a 6-part article I wrote on India Facts. And then the Renukal Verma of Vitasta Publication approached me and asked me to expand this into a book. And then from 2016 to 2018, I not only made a deeper study of Hinduism, I studied the menstruation practices in Buddhism, in Jainism, and then in Sikhism. And when I say Buddhism, I include the Buddhist practices in Tibet, China, Southeast Asia, in Japan, etc. And I also studied Christianity, Islam and Judaism, as well as ancient civilizations, Greek civilization, Roman civilization, and Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian civilization, as well as many other tribal communities in North America, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. This book is kind of a 360-degree view of menstruation, practices and notions prevalent in across the world. It is only when I studied the Christian theology and all, I realized that the negative connotation of the term impurity comes from the English language, comes from the Christian theology, and it has nothing to do with Hinduism. So that is the one question. We'll see whether we have any more question. And can dancers perform during menstruation, as we do not know in advance or when we commit to perform? Yes, this is a very important question. One thing is, if you are practicing Rajasola Paricharya, then your menstrual cycle kind of becomes regular. So you will have a kind of an idea that when your periods are going to fall. So you can, ideally you should try to avoid performing during those time, because it is harmful to the body, if not for anything else. But second reason is also that dance for a performance, I'm presuming a classical dancer, classical dancers. For a classical dancer, nritya is a sadhana. It is a yoga, right? It is a path towards mukti. It is not a simply just a dance process. But importantly, dance involves physical exertion. So however you see it, it is better to avoid performing during menstruation. But so you can schedule your programs such that it does not fall during the 3 or 4 days or 5 days when you're likely to have menstruation. Yes, but however, sometimes there may be emergencies where it is not possible, and such a time, if you have a performance and you have to do it, do not have any other option, then you go ahead and do it, because you do not have other option. Doing it once in a while will not harm your health, but doing it regularly, say in a year, if you are doing dance performance on say 6 or 8 of your performance falls during your periods, then that may be something you should try to avoid. Once in a while, it's okay. And that I say this for all others, not just dance performers, but also sportsmen and every other people. And you should definitely not practice, apart from performances, as dancers you practice it every day, right? So you should definitely not practice during the 3 days periods, because that will be, because it's a physically exertive process, and you should take rest. And that is something you can definitely do, because that is a practice you do on your own, right? This is I tell to all people, even though sports people and other people as well, they have to try to take rest as much as possible. But in some scenarios where it is unavoidable, you can go ahead and do it. But you try to keep this to a minimum, so that such performances do not affect your health. And do I have any more question? In addition to your book, which other books would you recommend with respect to women and religious practices? So, women and religious practices is a very big topic, and it is a topic which is also dependent upon what women we are speaking. For example, much of the Dharma Shastra, there is a very one good book called Stri Dharma Paddhati. Unfortunately, the only translation available is by a Western Indologist, and she takes a kind of a negative bias to that book, unfortunately, because of the inherent biases in modern narrative. But that book is purely concentrating on Grihastha Dharma, married women, especially with respect to the Stri Dharma, the Pativrata Dharma. But that may not be applicable to all women. For example, those who are unmarried, it will not be applicable to them. Or those who choose to, for example, if I speak about history, we have dancers from Devdasi communities, or those who were in the profession of Ganikas. These religious practices will not apply to them, because they have their own practices. So there is no one single book on women and religious practices per se, but I plan to write more on this in future. I have certain projects. I have been working on this Dharma Shastra views and on different issues, especially those connected to women. One is, of course, this menstruation. I have written on the topic of abortion. I have written on the topic of sati, the sati sahagamana, and I have written on the topic of adultery. I plan to write more on the grihastha dharma, on stri dharma as well. Hopefully, in a few years, you will get more books from me on this. But this Sri Dharma Padati is a very good book for to know the Grihastha Ashrama perspective, the Pativrata Dharma for a women. But again, for those who do not know Sanskrit, unfortunately there is no translation. I think there may be a Tamil translation. PDF is available online, I think. But other than this, the English translation, it is you have to be approach it with the skepticism that you have to take only the translation aspect and leave out the commentary of the Western Indologists. The commentary is kind of hostile, it's kind of unappreciative of the work by Trayambaka Yajwani. Trayambaka Yajwani is the author of this Sri Dharma Paddhati. The story is that he was commissioned by one of the, I think, Tanjore Marathas houses, if I am not wrong. He was commissioned to write this work for the benefit of women. And okay, so let me see if there are any more questions. Okay. Can you please share your contact to reach to? Okay. My email ID is sridhar.nithin, sridhar.nithin@gmail.com. Easiest way to reach me is, of course, Facebook and Twitter. You just have to type my name, Nithin SRRIDHAR, Nithin Sridhar, on Facebook and Twitter. I also have a Instagram account, but I am not very much active here, an Instagram account. But you can reach me on Facebook, on Twitter, and or on email as well. And Sheshadri Iyer, you can contact him. He can share my email ID with you if needed. And okay, I think are there any more questions? Very common, but what is the family and children are depending and for working lady? Yes, this is a very important question. How do we practically implement on a day-to-day basis family, children, and working ladies? Yes. For non-working ladies, I would suggest that the men folk have to contribute. I think this in older times when we have a larger family, we have joint families. Then when one woman in the family was in doing periods, the other women used to manage the the household affairs. But today we are all in nuclear family. So I think that the best way is the husband and wife to talk it out and see how they can work out. See, the women have to, and if there are men listening to this lecture, I want to impress upon them that this is very important to women as a lifestyle practice for their health as well as for their spiritual benefit, because this is part of their Stri Dharma, this is Rajoswala Dharma. So they must cooperate as much as they should. I think in a traditional households this was always the case. So you go to traditional families, you're still living by Vaidika Sampradaya, you will see that the women are strictly following this Rajodharma, and the men folk and other people in the family, if the children are a little bit grown up, they all pitch in to help the women follow this Rajodharma. And of course, modern families, we have to think how we can do it. We may not be able to implement all of it all the time, but even implementing as a some of it some of the time is good. For working women, as I said, she can definitely implement few things. For example, restrictions related to food, restrictions related to religion, not doing religious activity, not indulging in sexual intercourse, not sleeping during the daytime. And if you are in a corporate sector, in a software sector, they can work from home during those 3 days. And I think nowadays menstrual leave is also coming up, and this this is available, you can take them, and you can have an arrangement with your boss that you will take a menstrual leave of 3 days instead, and on its in its place you will work for 3 Saturdays or something like that. I think if women wants, I mean, if they are willing, they can definitely think about something based on their situations, how they can practice some of the things at least, if not all of them. And we have, of course, children, young women who do not have these so much restrictions in the sense of career and all yet, and they can definitely practice it. And okay, and are there any more questions? Let me just see. I think these are there are no more questions. Viewers, if you have any more questions, I think now will be the time to ask. I'll just wait a minute more, and then I will close the session. I'm very happy to address all the dancers, especially in the audience, and reach more and more people through this session. I hope I can see from the comments that many of you have liked this session, and I hope you will go further, read on it. There are many talks of mine on YouTube, as well as I request all of you to buy the book. It helps me as an author. I have a selfish motive when I say buy the book, and but more importantly, I think nothing can replace a book, in the sense that what I said here is merely a tip of an iceberg, so to speak, and my book goes into much deeper aspects into all these issues, and whatever doubts you have, most of them will be resolved if you just read my book. And anyways, I'll be available on Facebook and Twitter. If you have some questions, you can always contact me there. But I encourage people to read the book, and because you can share the book with your friends, family, with your daughters, because that would be helpful to increase, spread awareness about the subject. Because what I have conveyed you, you may not be able to convey the whole thing to others verbally, but the book conveys this in a more exhaustive manner. You can just share the book as well. So I think there are no more questions. With this, we come to the end of the session, and I thank everyone who patiently listened to me, and I again thank Sheshadri Ayarji and his Center for Performing Arts for giving me this opportunity and to speak, and I hope you found it enlightening, found it useful, and you can it will be inspired to practice some of them in your own lives or in among your family. With this concluding remarks, I end my session. Again, thank everyone. Shri Gurubhyo Namah.